A year ago, my best friend April fooled our whole school. We're still in quarantine, and the update has hit 100%. Tick tock. Time's up. As of 3 days ago, the update at Blackwood Academy reached 100%, and I have a choice. Do I stay here and perish with my brothers and sisters? Do I give in to the thing eating me from the inside out? Or do I fight it for the hope of maybe getting out of here? Maybe seeing daylight again, even if it's just for a second, a minute, an hour, a whole day, or even a week before I'm taken down. Once again, this post will be split into one today, one tomorrow. I've told you who created the Sioux virus. I've told you why. There's just one thing I left out. How? Who are you going to believe? Mr. Mycroft and his team, who will dissect you the second they pull you out of this hellhole? Or me? Her question was still prominent in my skull. Your friend. Friend? I thought, through the fog choking my thoughts. Could that really be it? The girl sitting next to me. Was she someone I knew? I like to think the shattered memories that were taken from me are like parallel universes. In them, Connor Marlowe wasn't just a classmate and a crush. He wasn't a stranger who passed me by on the corridors of Blackwood, who I occasionally had minimal conversation with. No, he was so much more than that. In the pieces of me that were taken from me, memories and feelings and emotions that were precious to me, Connor had found solace with me, trusting me with a secret that meant a lot to him. I remembered his smile. I remembered his tomato cheeks and how his head felt on my shoulder. He'd felt safe, warm, like home. It was all the more cruel that I didn't even know he was that important to me until my memories were dug up. That I had met him hundreds and thousands of times during my childhood, and each one held its own universe. When Jasper managed to convince him and Joey the blanks were bad, and as a group, we had gone digging in his office and ultimately got caught and our memories wiped again. Some of them good and some of them bad, but all of them were mine. All of them were precious. I'd like to think that no matter what Mycroft did, we always found each other. As cliche and stupid as that sound. Maybe that's why my feelings were always there. Because in one of those many, many memories of parallel universes, Connor felt comfortable enough to tell me who he really was. I was grateful for them. Even if they were painful or meant to be painful, they filled me with a sense of faith. Well, that was before reality hit, and I saw things for what they really were. I saw startling red, painting Connor like he was a canvas. I saw the creature writhing under his flesh, ready to break out. I saw that no matter what I did, I wouldn't be able to save him. Not this time. Presently, what was left of him lay across my knee, and I was running my fingers through his hair, through the vines and tendrils wrapped around his skull. My fingers would pause on his face, tracing hollow sockets which had been his eyes, now glimmering something inhuman, something slithering behind the irises. Connor's body wasn't quite dead, but it wasn't alive either. It hummed with electrical energy. Every so often his fingers twitched, forming a fist before going limp once more. There was something coating his flesh, a goo-like substance, like the thing which had crawled out of his ear. It reminded me a little of the fluid surrounding a baby in the mom's womb. When the update had been 68%, Connor was as good as dead. And 71 to 80, he was still comatose, his body jolting once in a while. But edging towards 100, I could sense that he, or at least the thing that had taken over him, the thing wriggling under his skin and spider webbing in his brain, was starting to wake up. I should have felt something, the pain of losing him, the anger that he'd been taken away in the first place. I didn't though. I just felt kind of numb. When I did feel something, it was thrill, joy, twisted happiness, which had been agony and loss that had lost him before we'd gotten a chance to meet again. I wasn't alone. With me, sitting with her legs dangling, her fingers occasionally tiptoeing across Connor's slimy cheeks, was the redhead. I saw her as an anomaly. In my memories, she was nobody, nothing but a shadow, a presence in the corner of my eye only I could see. And yet next to me, she felt real, like she'd always been there. "What book shall we read, Murra?" It'll be like a bedtime story. Her voice felt strangely right in my ears, like I'd heard it before, like I'd always known it, and yet I didn't. She was a stranger. A shadow had somehow bled from my memories into the real world. It's not like I could call the world surrounding me a reality. I was sitting in so-called ground zero for the Sioux virus, an IT room on the 3rd floor where I'd lost Jasper, where his mind was taken from him and he was turned into the exact opposite of his father's ideals. Mycroft wanted his son to be the one to save us, the ones initially infected with the Sioux virus, the ones who created it. Instead, Jasper became another mindless follower of the mutant that had spread way beyond his intention. Right then, I didn't want to think about who Jasper was to me, his present and past self. The Jasper had been torn away from me with the rest of my memories, and the boy who had pulled the parasite from my head. I didn't want to think about a lot of things. I wanted to stop thinking, full stop. How about Sleeping Beauty? Next to me, the red-headed girl had pulled out a hardback book. I didn't have to look at it to know it was a book I'd had when I was a kid. It was the same one Rory and I had used to kill Marmalade. From the corner of my eye, I could glimpse a smiling prince's face, spattered with old red. I remembered the exact way I had slammed the book down with both hands, giggling with glee at the thought of killing my sweet cat. It didn't hurt her, were the words running through my 7-year-old mind. She liked it. Marmalade liked the pain, and killing her would be the best gift I could ever give her, and making her suffer would be the cherry on the top. The memory hid me in blurred flashes, and I shook my head, a shiver slithering down my spine. The redhead still hadn't told me her name, or why she was with me, why she seemed to be both real and fake, a stranger and yet someone I knew all too well. The girl laid the book on her lap, fingering the spine with her fingers. She didn't open it yet. "Not Sleeping Beauty," I found myself whispering in a sharp breath. "Then how about The Very Hungry Caterpillar? That's one of my favorites." She took my hand, entangling our fingers, and her touch felt familiar. "Can we, Murra? Please?" I didn't respond, and she pulled out another book, took an exaggerated deep breath, and began to read. "In the light of the moon," she began in a soft voice, "a little egg lay on a leaf." The girl cleared her throat and continued, running her fingers over Connor's cheeks. Her touch was almost motherly, and I was thankful for her. I was thankful for her company. Despite at the back of my mind, a thought was growing, an ugly thought which wouldn't leave me alone. I wouldn't entertain it, though. I just wanted to stay in that one singularity forever, with every phone glowing 99%. The strange girl's voice droned in my ears, but it was comforting, like warm water filling me up. One warm Sunday morning, the sun came up and pop! Out of the egg came a tiny and very hungry caterpillar. If only there was a way to stop thinking, I thought dizzily. Well, there was. I was close. So close to it. I was teetering on the edge, ready to plunge. If I were to give in to the monster in my head, that meant I wouldn't have to think anymore. I wouldn't have to care. I wouldn't have to love or hope or have faith. I would be just like Jasper, thoughtless like Joey and Rory, all the other subjects who had evolved with the virus. I wouldn't have to fight myself anymore. That thought was appealing. There was something sharp in my hands, something I kept spiking my fingers on, but it didn't hurt. I didn't feel real pain anymore, only bursts of something else, the kind of something I wasn't going to think about. I was still coming to terms with the memories I had lost, what had been torn away from me. I expected to fall, to plunge deep, deep down, with the knowledge of what I had done to my mother and the reality of the last 10 years of my life. Instead, though, I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I didn't speak. I just stared real hard at the saw, clutched in my other hand, which was tracing the scars on Connor's face, a sharp rivulets of red pooling between my fists when I squeezed the blade until my body was humming with elation, that intoxicating pleasure exploding in every nerve ending, every part of me which felt so wrong, and yet so right at the same time. What a strange feeling to have. He started to look for some food. The girl continued to narrate in a low voice. On Monday, he ate through one apple. Her words seeped into me. So familiar. It was there, right at the back of my mind, blooming bright. The memory came slow and gentle, like a wave of lukewarm water coming over me. I was 7 years old again, standing in the parking lot in front of Blackwood Children's Surgery. Mom was ahead of me, splashing through puddles, while I stayed frozen, unsure whether to turn around and try and find the unsmiling nurse who had carried Jasper away. Mara, honey. Mom turned to frown at me, and the wind blew her hair from her face, revealing an expression of hers I wasn't used to. Irritation. I opened my mouth to speak, but there was a shadow bleeding behind her. I saw the flash of red, the ribbon entangled in crimson curls dancing in the light breeze. This time, though, I clung to it. I started forwards, ignoring my mother's words, taking long strides toward the shadow was becoming less of a shadow and more of something I could see, touch, and hear. I heard her low humming, not ring around the rosy. It was a song I didn't know. She was my age, bright red hair framing her face like her whole head had been set on fire. Under the blazing sun and gray sky combined, she almost looked like a superhero. The closer I got to her, the crayoned X on her face started to slowly crumble away, revealing a little girl with sad eyes and twisted lips. She was frowning at my bloody hand, her gaze flicking between my mom and the roses in her grasp. Miss Delaney? Her voice was soft. Can I talk to Mara, please? I watched my mother's face twitch, her expression darkening. Mom heard her. She was just choosing to ignore the girl. I nodded eagerly, though I didn't risk saying anything yet. Before I could, though, Mom's hand was in mine, and she was pulling me back through puddles. When I twisted around to look at the girl, she was standing very still, like she was debating running over to me. Instead, though, she cupped her mouth and shouted, "Where's Jasper?" Gone, I thought. Mom slammed the car door before I could answer, but the girl continued, screaming into the wind.
Mara, what happened to Jasper? Did his dad do something bad? Was it a blank?
Gone, I thought again. Instead of responding, I drew a sad face in the condensation on the window. As Mom drove away, I got glimpses of the girl, her frown as she watched me, red hair dancing in the breeze. She opened her mouth again.
Murra!
The girl's voice carried in my memory before bringing me back to the present, to her much older voice, slipping back into reality. Built a small house called the Cocoon around himself. He stayed inside for more than 2 weeks. Then he nibbled a hole in the cocoon, pushed his way out, and he was a beautiful butterfly. When the girl slammed the book shut, I flinched a little. The end. She shot me a grin, her gaze zeroing in on the saw still in my hands. I couldn't let go of it. Not yet. Well, have you decided to kill the king yet? Jasper, I thought. She meant Jasper. But he was supposed to be the cure. That's what the associate of Mycroft had said, right? When I lifted my head, the girl held out her hand for me to take, and after hesitating, I took it. She pulled me to my feet. Her eyes sparkled with that same glimmer I'd seen in Jasper and Rory. Why don't we take a walk? Her smile brightened when I turned back to Connor, my heart jumping into my throat. She lay a hand on my shoulder. Relax. Connor's not going anywhere. Trust me. What's happening to him? I asked as she led me out of the classroom. When I stepped out of Jasper's classroom, would be a designated or safe place, alarm bells started ringing in my head. But I felt like I was floating, flying. That slime all over him. Is that the virus? The girl hummed. I guess you could say that. And what is it doing to him? I demanded. The girl sighed. Were you even listening to The Very Hungry Caterpillar? It is a novel designed, illustrated, and written by Eric Carle. The book features a voracious caterpillar eating foodstuff before pupating and emerging as a butterfly. It has won many children's literature awards and major graphic design awards. She continued on in an endless drawl, like she was directly citing a wiki page. I know what the book is, I cut in. I just don't understand why you keep mentioning it. She didn't turn around. Think about it, Murra. Think real hard and then get back to me. Joey and Mr. Mycroft's initial 20 subjects were waiting outside, seeming to part ways for us. When I caught his eye, he offered me a wink. I didn't turn back, but I could sense him behind me, his warm breath tickling the back of my neck. I knew that he was humming straight away. How could I not? Ring around the rosy. The nursery rhyme haunting my memories, as well as my first encounter with him as an evolved freak. Still, though, it hurt knowing I'd had a past with him, where we were friends. As I took slow steps down the hallway, the lights once again flickered to life in sync with my movements before exploding, showering us with glass. The girl didn't seem to mind, dancing over the bodies of freaks and remains, glistening in gore. The same thing that's happening to these guys, she hummed. They're napping, just having a long sleep. Even the freaks? I hissed out, quickening my pace. The girl twisted around to face me, her expression lit up in sickly light. Even the freaks? What's the difference between them and the ones who are like Joey and Rory? She only responded with a laugh, leading me down to the second-floor staircase before coming to an abrupt stop. Initially, I didn't know why. Before I glimpsed a body curled up on the third step from the bottom, I recognized the head of scruffy curls automatically. Jasper Mycroft was like the others, curled into the fetal position, his head buried in his knees. He might have looked peaceful if it wasn't for the tendrils suffocating his head. Before I could stop myself, I was moving further down the staircase, my hands shaking. When I looked around for the girl, she had vanished out of existence, leaving just me and him. Kneeling in front of Jasper, I reached down and prodded his arm, which was wet with something. The same substance coating Connor. He was covered in it. And when I investigated further, the same stuff was coming out of his ears and nose and mouth, oozing from every orifice. I nudged him, and when he didn't move, I shoved him hard enough to send him toppling down the last few steps. Still, he was nothing but a tangle of limbs. I checked for breathing, but only got a heartbeat. But when I leaned closer, risking pressing my ear to his chest, I felt something move. Not him, not his body. It was under his skin, writhing under his flesh. What did I tell you? The girl was behind me again, peering over my shoulder. If you're asking yourself the question, is Jasper Mycroft worth saving? The answer is no. He was the one who started this, even if he was a pawn in his father's game. I can assure you, Murra, Jasper is not as innocent as he seems. What are you talking about? Her lip curved. Until his last breath as a human, he was adamant that he was a good person, that he was going to make a cure and undo everything his father had done, and his own mistake. But then he got his memories back. When Aurora Michelson dug around his brain and pulled up all the crap that had been suppressed, he finally saw himself for who he really was. Her voice was a low murmur in my ear, and it drove him insane, Murra. You've already seen it, right? He's at the place of no return. And it wasn't just the brute force when Aurora Michelson forced his brain into submission. No, it was his own memories which snatched his mind. Her words sunk in and shivers slipped down my spine. Ironic, right? The girl slumped down next to me with a heavy sigh. The symbol of humanity being as much of a monster as the original Spindle subjects who were quite literally created to be the embodiment of hopelessness. It's no surprise what he saw pushed him over the edge and sent him round the bend. What did he do? Strange. I knew the girl wasn't supposed to be with me. I knew she was impossible. And yet I was clinging onto her, talking to her like she was real. She was all I had to talk to after all. Why don't we ask Jasper? Then you can decide if you want to kill the king or not. She entangled her fingers with mine and squeezed tight. It was familiar. I knew that touch, that squeeze of pressure that told me everything was going to be okay. I found myself holding on to her hands for dear life as I felt myself fall once again. But it wasn't like last time when my memories had been forced onto me. It was different. Instead of pulling away, I embraced the image which was bleeding into my mind. A school corridor. I was seeing crowds of kids ahead of me, chatter and laughter, and a group of seniors blasting music. A locker slammed next to me, but I didn't flinch. The noise around me was white noise, and my heart was thundering in my chest. Something was wrong. My whole body felt wrong. With the memory came thoughts, emotions that were mine. Of course they were mine. But they were twisted, wrong, polluting my body. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. I could barely glimpse the palm of my hands, which were held out in front of me. Filthy, I thought. I couldn't get them clean no matter what I did. I'd spent my last class in the girls' bathroom scrubbing and scrubbing and scrubbing on my hands, but they weren't clean. They would never be clean. A hysterical cry was clawing at my throat. It was so hard to swallow, so hard to bury. The feeling of emptiness had been following me around since lunch, when I'd opened my bag and found my usual lunchbox empty. Mom always packed my lunch, even when she was sick, even when she was having a bad day or we had an argument. Mom always packed my lunch. Since then, the cavern in my gut and the gap in my memories was driving me crazy. My hands, I wanted to scream until my throat was raw. Why couldn't I get my hands clean? And why did they feel so wrong? So filthy. Gritting my teeth, I started to scratch at my flesh, scratching and scratching and scratching, thinking back to the night before. Connor, Joey, and I broke into the Mycroft house to try and find Jasper. I hadn't been to school in almost a week. It was Joey's idea to look in Mycroft's office for clues, and had found documents and some secret project with our names in red ink. Not just our names, Jasper's, and more worryingly, 18 other kids in our class. Before we could get everything we needed, Mycroft caught the three of us and we were grilled for 2 hours. Before he was pulled away for something business related, we managed to get out, agreeing on not risking getting caught again. But then what? I'd gone over it enough times in my head to drive me crazy. After we got out of the office, everything blurred into one foggy, confusing mess. I couldn't remember the walk home or what I did that night. All I knew was that I'd woken up with a sudden overwhelming urge to bleach my hands. They were filthy. I couldn't stop thinking about it, like a mantra. My fingernails felt like they were caked in something I'd never get out. The only explanation for the memory blanks would be Mycroft. He'd been drugging us with blanks since we were kids. But we escaped, I thought dizzily. I remember the three of us sprinting down the road. I remembered Joey's panting for breath and Connor's wheezed laughter. After running for what felt like hours, we finally collapsed onto the steaming tarmac. I stared up at the blistering sun above me and struggled to catch my breath. Connor lay face down, his head in his arms. "We are never doing that again." He lifted his head before kicking Joey, who was spread out like a starfish with a stupid grin on his face. "Seriously, were Jasper and Rory's disappearances not enough for you to freak out? Do you want to actually die?" Joey shot him the finger. "Cool it, man. We're good. We have solid evidence that Mycroft is not just a creep, but also a mad scientist obsessed with us." He sat up and leaned over Connor, who pushed him away. "High five?" "You don't deserve a high five," Connor mumbled. "You took way too long to load up all those files on his laptop." Joey lurched back with a look of mock horror. "It's not my fault he still has a dinosaur computer. We got evidence, Connor." "Yeah? And where's that evidence?" Connor sat up, shooting the boy a teasing smile. "Come on, man. Show it to me." Joey groaned, rolling onto his stomach. "Up your butt. Come on. You see this is a win." "You're both insufferable," I mumbled, frowning at the sky. At strange colored clouds colliding with the sunset, as the boys' voices collapsed into white noise in my head. After that, the memory came to an abrupt stop, fog taking over. Beyond lying on warm tarmac and staring at the sky, I had no idea what happened next. "Mara?" The familiar voice pulled me out of my reverie, and my head snapped up, only to meet eyes with a smiling redhead. At first, my mind seemed to retract, to push her away, but she persisted, forcing herself into fruition. Luna. Her name was on my lips, but I couldn't seem to say it. The girl seemed bright-eyed as usual, but her expression darkened when I didn't return her grin. Luna Martina was known as the freshman who didn't know how to dress, and that was evident in her choice that day. A bright yellow summer dress with matching leggings, Converse, and her usual ribbon tied into crimson curls hanging in her eyes. Seeing her was enough to pull me back into reality. I brushed my hands on my jacket and tried to smile, swallowing the dread eating me up from the inside. But Luna wasn't stupid. "Are you okay? You bailed on me in class." "Yeah." I shoved my hands in my jeans pocket. "I just wasn't feeling good." Luna cocked her head, her forehead wrinkling with worry. "So you're sick?" I shrugged, swallowing barf creeping up my throat. "It's nothing. It's just Mom didn't pack my lunch." Uh-huh. Luna frowned. "Did you ask for some this morning?" Her question hit me like a wave of ice-cold water. "No, I didn't see her this morning. She was at work. She'd been at work for a few days now." Instead of telling Luna that, though, I pasted on a smile, despite the fact that I couldn't stop shaking. "Yeah, she probably forgot." Luna nodded, leaning against my locker and tipping her head back with a sigh. "Have you seen Connor and Joey anywhere? They weren't in class." I could feel my breath getting heavier. You haven't seen them?" Luna shook her head. "No. I mean, it's pretty hard to miss Joey's scarlet mane. He's practically glowing." Her words were barely registering in my head. Something in my gut lurched. Luna must have seen my expression, her eyes darkening. "You think it's Mycroft?" I didn't answer, suddenly all too aware of every freshman which walked by. I searched for Connor's sandy-colored hair and Joey's baseball cap, but all I saw were blurred faces and odd clothing choices. "Mara?" Luna stepped in front of me, her arms folded across her chest. When I stood on my tiptoes, peering into the crowd of kids, she waved her hand in front of my face. "Look, I know I'm not in the secret experiment club or whatever. You know, the gang you're all in since you're Mr. M's lab rats." I let out a shuddery breath. "The Jasper and Rory Defense Squad," I managed to get out, when Luna's frown twisted into a smile, her eyes lighting up. The weight on my chest lifted. "Joey came up with it." "Of course he did." Luna rolled her eyes, her lips twitching. "Anyway, I know that look." She poked me in the cheek. "It's your I broke into Mycroft's office last night and I'm shitting my pants look." I couldn't resist a smile. "How did you know?" "I may have stalked you on Snapchat." I cocked a brow. "I don't have Snapchat." "Connor does," Luna said. "Mara, I know you want answers. So do I. I mean, do you think I'm going to sit back and let that creep turn my friends into empty husks? But breaking into people's houses will get you hurt, or brainwashed, or whatever weird crap Mycroft does. We all saw what he did to Jasper, right?" The knot in my gut started to entangle when she grabbed my hands. "I don't want you to end up like him," Luna whispered. "So, we're going to get out of here, okay? Call it a road trip. Me, you, Connor, and Joey. If we can find Rory and Jasper, we'll bring them too. We can't drive, so we'll take the train or maybe a bus, and we'll go to someone who will actually listen to us. Adults, Mara." Luna squeezed my hands tighter. "We need adults who aren't our parents, who brush off what we say as delusional rambling and overactive imaginations. We need to get out of town and talk to, I don't know, the CIA? You mean the government? Luna sighed. Literally anyone outside of Blackwood who isn't brainwashed by this psycho town. I nodded, my breath in my throat. Right, I hissed out. Then we need to find the boys. Luna's eyes widened, her smile broadening. Wait, we're actually doing my thing? I could only offer her an exasperated look. Yes, I just need to find Connor and Joey. That weight was back, pushing hard on my chest. Great! Luna linked arms with me. So we look for them together. 2 is better than 1, right? As much as I wanted to agree with her, I wasn't going to risk losing Luna too. No, I'll go, and you stay here. I stepped back from her, even when it hurt to push her away. I'm not pulling you into this. You said it yourself, right? Mycroft is dangerous. He's screwed with Jasper's head, and I don't even know what he's done to Rory. But it's bad. It's like, really bad. Luna's eyes flashed with hurt, her lip curling. But I am in this. I always have been, Murra. I've been with you guys since we were kids. She laughed, though it was harsh and cutting. I'm not even on Mycroft's radar. You know that. I nodded, planting my hands on her shoulders. And that's where you're going to stay. But get snacks for the road, okay? I started to back away, stumbling over my feet. We'll meet back here.
And if we don't?
She yelled back as I was pushing my way through kids heading to their last class.
What do I do if you don't come back?
Luna's voice was almost a cry.
Murra!
20 minutes later, I was in Joey's doorstep with my hands on my knees, gasping for breath. I didn't even have to knock on the door. After a minute of trying to suck in precious oxygen and try not to faint from sprinting in the late May heat, the door opened, and Joey's mom appeared in the doorway. Murra! Her tone was bemused. What on earth are you doing? I managed to articulate words through sharp hisses of breath. Joey, he here? Mrs. Summers chuckled. Unfortunately not. He has an afternoon appointment with Mr. Mycroft. What? I straightened up, swallowing a hysterical hiss. She must have seen my expression. Nothing to worry about, I'm sure. Just a checkup. I took in her words slowly, my head spinning. Did he come home last night? Joey, I yelled. Your son? I had to swallow a shriek. Did he come home last night? Joey's mother inclined her head. No, I believe he was with Mr. Mycroft last night too. Her smile dampened slightly. Murra, are you okay? You're looking quite pale. She gestured inside. Would you like to come in? I've just made some lemonade and you look like you need a nice drink, sweetie. I have fresh bread too. I'm fine, I whispered, backing away, my cheeks burning. Mrs. Summers sighed. Of course. Then I guess I'll see you later. She started to close the door. Make sure to get a drink, Murra. I stopped, my Converse grazing through tarmac. The words were hot in my throat, bubbling, impossible to choke down. Before I could stop myself, I twisted around, settling the woman with a scowl. Hey, Mrs. Summers? She lifted her head. Your son is being experimented on. I'm sorry? Her smile quickly faded. Your son, I said, with exaggerated slowness, is being experimented on. You know, like actually experimented on. I mined scissors with my fingers. The sessions that he's having with Mycroft, they're not making him better, Mrs. Summers. They're making him worse. And it's just another excuse to fuck with his memories until he's better off dead. That was the first time I'd sworn in front of an adult. It felt good. Her expression seemed to twist into the usual look of disappointment that I'd gotten off of my own mother. I'd lost count of how many times I'd told her, but it was always that I had a crazy imagination or was delusional because of my non-existent illness. Luna was right. The adults in town were inept. Her parents didn't listen. "Excuse me?" Mrs. Summers was yelling, but I was already halfway down the pathway.
Young lady, what on earth are you talking about? Mara, there is no need to be so rude. Sorry,
I yelled flippantly over my shoulder. My phone buzzed in my pocket when I was across town. The sun was scorching my back. Pulling out my phone, I glanced at the screen. "Luna, did you find them?" I didn't reply, putting it on silent and stuffing it back in my pocket. Harvey Mycroft's house was maybe the fanciest in town. He was well respected after all, known for being a loving family man, as well as the town doctor. I knew the place well since Jasper had snuck us in under his father's nose. I knew that we had to climb over the gate quickly to avoid being spotted by the security cameras, dodge around the pool jacuzzi, and slip through the gap in the ground floor window, which led into the kitchen. Jasper's instructions echoed in my head as I vaulted over the gate, getting my foot stuck in one of the spiky rigs and almost toppling off of it. Keeping my head down, I took slow steps around the pool area, then the jacuzzi and lounge chairs that I was sure were there just for show. According to the Mycroft's son himself, none of them went into the pool. Jasper wasn't allowed because of his condition, and Harvey Mycroft was too busy being a comic book villain. As for his wife, Mrs. Mycroft had left them last year. Apparently, she was seeing another man behind his back, but Jasper had been adamant his mother hadn't left him willingly and had been under some kind of hypnotic voodoo. I wasn't sure what voodoo was. Maybe it was another word for mind control. The downstairs kitchen was empty when I slipped through the gap in the window, which to my surprise was still there. Most of my memories had holes in, sure, but I'd squeezed through the window so many times I knew exactly where the scars were on my ankles, where I had cut them on sharp edges. I knew the scary bump on Joey's head when he'd gotten too tall and banged his head, almost getting us caught after hissing out a series of swears an 11-year-old definitely shouldn't be saying out loud. It took all my upper body strength to get in. I didn't check upstairs this time, or the office, because when I straightened up and drank in my surroundings, I was greeted to a door I'd never seen before. Well, Jasper had referred to it as the basement when we were little. It was vastly different from the usual design of the kitchen, sticking out between the rustic modern interior of the Mycroft home. It was a large metal slab, a door, which when I got closer, seemed to operate on a computerized panel. To my surprise though, the door was wide open, almost like it knew I'd been coming. I started towards it, my breath in my throat. Then I heard it, laughing. I jumped back and twisted around, scanning for Mycroft or his security. There was nobody there, however. I was alone, and when I took another hesitant step through the door, I heard it again. I knew that laugh. My body was working against my brain and I was stumbling down a spiral set of stone steps, leading into darkness. There was light at the bottom and I held on to that, forcing my legs to go faster. As I descended the stairs, the laughter got louder and louder until it was ringing in my ears. Hysterical laughter, almost painful, like it was trying to projectile his lungs straight from his mouth. The room I found myself in gave me the creeps, shivers, spider webbing up and down my spine. It looked like a doctor's surgery crossed with a morgue. The place was clinical white and glistening silver. There were several observation beds and 3 gurneys stacked on top of each other, a laptop computer sitting on a desk, and a strange-looking machine in the corner of the room. The laughter was coming from behind a blue corduroy curtain near the back. I didn't waste any time and ran over, grabbing the curtain and tugging it back. Connor, he was there, strapped to an observation bed, his body rattling, his head swinging side to side like he was trying to get water out of his ear. The first thing I wanted to do was hug him. But when I took a closer look at my best friend, he wasn't even looking at me. His eyes were empty, like they had never been alive. A smile was stretched across his face, and with every bellowing laugh that escaped his lips, his body rattled the bed he was lying on. There was something spotted on his cheek, bright, almost tantalizing red streaks, tainting olive skin and freckles. Connor, I managed to get out in a sharp cry. I grabbed at his restraints, my hands shaking. What happened? When he didn't respond, instead bursting into a giggling fit, I slapped him across the face, but that just made him laugh harder. I grabbed his face and forced him to look at me. Hey, look at me. He did, finally. When his eyes met mine, though, his smile only broadened. Hangman, Connor said. What? I grabbed his hand and squeezed it as hard as I could. Connor, it's Murra. I struggled to speak through sobs already choking my throat. I'm going to get you out of here, okay? Connor inclined his head. Do you want to play hangman? He had let out another loud laugh, and the lights above flickered. Let's play hangman, Murra. I gave up on his restraints, searching for something to cut the Velcro straps. Hangman? Yeah. Connor's head tipped back and he giggled. I followed his gaze and glimpsed a shadow hanging over the two of us. No, not a shadow. It was a body. Get it? Connor giggled. Hang, man. The body swung back and forth, almost like a joke. I recognized the swollen blue face and empty sockets where his eyes had been carved out of his skull, the plaid shirt and dark brown hair poking from a baseball cap. Connor's father. Something acidic and vile clawed its way up my throat, but I swallowed it and returned to his restraints. This time I couldn't look Connor in the eye. Not when he was looking up at the corpse of his father and laughing. Something hysterical was building inside me, questions burning. That was what Connor had been laughing at. Not something that was funny, like a TV show or a book, or anything remotely comedic. It was his dead father. His dad was hanging over him, and he didn't care. He was laughing, giggling, acting like a child with too much sugar. It was then when I noticed Connor's nails, staining a red tainting the flesh of his palms and the tips of his fingers. I'd already seen it. The second I had pulled the curtain over, I saw it. Connor had plucked his own father's eyes out, and the only possible way he could ever do that would be someone twisting his thoughts. How his brain worked. Mycroft had been taking our memories for years, but never something like this. What did he do to you? I demanded, trying to stay calm. Tell me, what did he do to you? Connor's gaze flicked to me, still grinning maniacally. Ring around the rosy, he began to murmur in a sing-song. When I didn't respond, he wrenched his arm from the restraints and grabbed my wrist, squeezing so hard his nails bit into my flesh. His eyes were still on his father, empty eyes flicking back and forth as the body swung back and forth. Sing it with me. Can you sing it with me, Mara? Ring around the rosy, I whispered, biting back a shriek when he tightened his grip. A bucket full of posies. Ashes, ashes. He laughed, his voice a hysterical cry, pulling at the restraints. I could only stare at him, trying to ignore the vacancy in his eyes. Come on, Mara. You know the words. I joined in, echoing him. All fall down. The boy nodded eagerly. Yes, we all fall down. All fall down. All fall down. We're all falling down. The moment the words slipped from his lips, the body of Connor's father dropped to the ground with a meaty sounding smack on marble, and Connor burst into manic giggles, still clinging to my wrist. His fingernails dug in, sharp and cutting, and I had to bite back a squeak. Connor! When I pulled at his wrist, his eyes held no life. Nothing to suggest he was looking at me, taking me in. All I saw were pitch-dark pupils, staring into something dark, something terrifying, a void only he could see. Mara, at your young age of 14, do you understand the concept of a criminal offense? When I twisted around, Harvey Mycroft was standing in the doorway. He raised his hand in a wave and then gestured to Connor's dad in a crumbled heap. He stepped forward, lips pulled into a disappointed frown. As much as I'd like Connor's father to be a new piece of decor in my office, I'm fairly sure after the novelty has worn off, he will start to smell